He is a detailed man.
So I'm going to call the May 17th, 2023 wastewater treatment plant workshop to order. Present, we have Richard Nichols, Earl Webb, Press Lee, Austin Calaman, Robin Davis, and Sharon, and Josh. Tom Owen will not be with us tonight. He is home playing nursemaid to his wife, and we wish him and Libby the best. I think, as everyone's aware, last Saturday we had an election. Presley was reelected to the board. Congratulations. Barbara Curtis will be joining us, taking over the seat of Tom Owens. And she unfortunately could not be here tonight because she's in Rome. So we should all have a moment of silence. But I have talked with her, and she will be joining us next week. Just as a public announcement, our routine BPW meeting has been moved from Wednesday to Thursday, so that we can have swearing in and election of officers. So it will be Thursday here in City Council chambers. And
3 p.m.
Oh, 3 p.m. I'm sorry. Thank you much. So the agenda tonight is our fifth meeting of fifth workshop. And what we're going to do is go over a little bit of history of where we got here, the tour of Wolfneck that Hans was gracious, Hans Medler and Todd Lawson are here in the audience. Hans was gracious enough to give to the BPW, the city, and interested citizens. And we're going to do a brief financial overview. I know there were some questions relative to the actual impact on customers, and we'll cover that. And then open it up for questions. So without further ado, then we'll move on. So how did we get here? So the board held its first public workshop in March of 2022. So we're over a year into this endeavor. This is the fifth workshop since then, and we will continue to hold these monthly until we make a final decision. And then we'll determine how frequently we'll be holding follow-up meetings to keep the public informed. The GHG was first issued to the public in January 2023, and it continues to be the basis for all the options and the research. And I believe GHD is on the line with us. Are they not?
Yeah, Tom below.
Okay. So the tour of Wolfneck, I unfortunately was unable to attend, so I'm going to turn it over to Austin and Earl to go through the highlights of that.
You may start? Yeah, go ahead. Good. You can do all the good details. It was very interesting. I had never been there before. I had looked at it online, trying to figure out how a marsh can work and all this kind of stuff, trying to understand the elevation and size, and I could never figure it out until I got there. It's a huge property. I mean, it was really, really big. They took us down. Hans took us down past the final four, the last station, that holding tank. Just incredible how big it was. All the different irrigations that you can see around you. Windy day. Sumner thought we should have windmills back there. A lot of other things, but we got back into the building, and Hans kind of laid the map out for us, showed us a lot of different things. Sea level rise came up, and he kind of showed where some parts of the spray irrigation may get cut off. Not any kind of big deal in any stretch of the imagination. And I assume it's papered already for you guys to put in evergreens and deciduous trees back there. So if you look at where that, I don't know if you can pull it, I actually can see it up there. That facility now is going to have trees on it. And it's not just evergreens, but it's deciduous as well. And there's going to be a walking path put back there. And is that set for any particular date to have that started, or?
Whenever the state in its powers issues the permit.
Okay, so a couple years, but no. I
Just so people from the audience can hear, what Hans said is they're waiting on authorization from the state.
When we got back inside, a lot of conversations. It's kind of like the Barnum and Bailey, circus with Hans. So many ideas, so many different thoughts came out in the conversations, from purple pipes, which I think Summer and I have only talked about maybe 6 times since then, something like that. The idea that you actually put, some of the effluent into pipes for irrigation that get sprayed onto land for irrigation purposes. Other things came out about, you can kind of see where a marsh could be put in for that kind of polishing that we've talked about as well. I'm trying to go what else kind of came up in those meetings. We actually ended up breaking off into different sessions. I was talking to some different people than Sumner and some of the other folks were, but just a great idea to see how big that property is. They have what I've been told by someone else, and I won't say his name, beauty strips, where when you look at the fields that are exposed, but around them you've got trees, so people can't see the plant. I've been past it many times, as I'm sure you have, on bicycle. You just can't see it from anywhere. So they've done a very good job of putting that together and walking us through the different aspects of the plant. Hans, anything you'd add to that, or?
We have said before to the state that the commitment to afforest the facility and to accommodate the walking path is independent of the discussions we have here.
Yeah.
But the facility would not be upgraded as a treatment plant to a very low nutrient if we were just doing silviculture, because for that we just need a standard sand filter, not a highly advanced biological nutrient reduction project. So that's the difference. So the state gave us the permit for the afforestation project. We would add filtration, but that's just standard, for nothing other than what we call a full public contact. So the walking path can be accomplished. But other than that, a facility we are contemplating on the option 3 is way advanced over what we would build with the expansion under the silviculture option.
Okay.
So these are two different, completely animal. But if we were to get that permit tomorrow, we would have to obviously make a decision. These decision points, just like when we get a permit tomorrow for inland bays, which is more likely, and there's a decision point.
Okay. Austin, anything from you or press?
To actually get an idea of the magnitude of it, you have to see it in person. I mean, the weekends, you start to finish when you are at thanks. When you start at the actual office itself and you walk back towards the very last lagoon, I mean, it's a good 5-10 minute walk, depending on how quick you walk. And it just is expansive. I mean, it's breathtaking back there. So you would never know a wastewater treatment plant exists.
One other thought in that.
Yeah.
Is, you see, like, by seeing the facility size and the ability to store, you understand the ability to release on a timed manner.
Yeah.
And you understand the ability to contain, storm containment, as well as anything, if anything were ever to happen with your mechanical plant facility operation, like Chris is painfully aware of what can happen at treatment plants, whether that's in Rehoboth or in Lewes, to have the ability to store days and weeks worth of water is just, you don't get that every day. But that facility allows you design options he and I could never dream of, but having that opportunity, and that's what I was discussing with someone, like the palette is wide open of what we can do out there and be environmentally innovative.
Yeah, and just to amplify, what Hans you're talking about is the ability to store water so that we could discharge on an outgoing tide and we could sustain multiple tide cycles during nor'easters or coastal storms that would cause a backup. The facility allows for that. And it is not something that we could do either by any stretch of imagination at our current facility. And the amount of land that would be needed for a new facility would be cost prohibitive. Anything else?
Just in a press, anything?
All right. That was the Wolf Neck tour portion. Moving on to new information. So we met, the Lewes BPW has met with several of the municipalities that have existing agreements with other counties, not Sussex, with respect to the lessons learned that they had, pointers and recommendations. And that was to get us better informed so that as we work with the county to reaching an agreement, we are better informed and we know where to be going. So I think that was very helpful. That will be used to help us form bullet points to exchange with the county so that we can then start moving forward on a draft agreement that would meet both our needs, the Lewes community and Sussex counties. We're actively working on that agreement now and are hoping that we will be able to get something to the county in the next week or two to start moving that agreement further forward. Earl, Austin, anything?
It's pretty self-explanatory. We have to have some sort of guideline to kind of craft where we're headed, and that's going to lead to discussions into whatever agreement kind of transpires under an option 3.
And Mike Hoffman has been instrumental in helping us to focus our thoughts on that. So thank you, Mike.
And I think for the public, that's probably one of the most important things in this whole study. I mean, where those terms of that agreement are concerned to a lot of citizens in Lewes and us too, obviously. So I think this is crucial on what decision we make and what those terms are. So this is an important part of this whole study.
Yeah, I think just to, add to what Press just said, any decision we make, A, is going to be the biggest decision probably since BPW was formed, and B, is going to be something that is in perpetuity. I mean, once we demolish the plant, the going back or alternatives becomes more limited. So we want to make sure we get it right, or as close to right as we can the first time. Earl, anything?
I'm good, yeah.
Slide 6. This slide was actually first presented in January 2023, and it has been revised in one minor aspect. We did find a calculational error in option 2A, and that is what is shown in red, has been updated. It's not materially significant as far as the rankings or decision process, but we just wanted to make sure that everyone understood all of the copies on the web have been updated and are noted for this slide being revised. So, then slide 7 is the key. 6 is really there so that for completeness of the package, and it's the basis for slide 7. Slide 7. This slide is taking the percentages that were in slide 6 for the range of cost impacts and merely trying to present them in a manner that is more approachable, understandable by the public. So what we did was we took an average sewer bill for the citizens or the ratepayers of Lewes, which is 4,000 gallons a month, which works out to be $77.49. And we took the percentage ranges and multiplied them by 77.49. So there's no other math behind these numbers other than multiplying by the factor of K. Individual bills will vary depending upon how much water, sewer you use. So this is not saying that every individual is going to see these increases for the options. It is merely representing a stacked ratio of the options. All of the numbers come from Appendix D and E in the GHD report, which is approximately 24 pages. And I think at the last meeting I had referenced that GHD, it's a very, very detailed line item by line item buildup for the costs for each of the options. So there's no new math other than the correction and multiplying by the factor of K. The couple of caveats on this is that the costs are all based on current dollars if the project was implemented today instantaneously. So there's no cost of money associated with them. There's no future escalation. And the projects do have a varying time schedule, but that schedule will not be able to be determined until we actually get a detailed design and start the process. However, I think as we've discussed before, the time frame for all of this from any of these options is on the 5-year time frame. Nothing is going to be implemented. I mean, these are major engineering projects. So this a standard caveat that we always make is all costs are subject to change depending on the design details, future rate increases for other reasons such as improvements to our collection system, supply chain impact. I think everyone who's bought anything knows that the supply chain continues to be unstable and prices are going up. That's why we used current dollars. And the other thing I would say is that for an apples to apples comparison, options 2 and 3 do not contain the cost of operating our pump stations. This is not materially significant in the overall ranking of them, but we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that that is one of the things that is not in these numbers. But is going to need to be, all the pump stations need to be upgraded. It's part of our capital, 5-year capital plan, as is lining of our pipes and so on. So I think at that point, I think I'd like to stop at this point.
I'd just like to say that, I'm concerned about having these types of numbers published because it's not going to end up at these numbers. We guarantee that, really.
Same with the percentages.
Yeah.
Even the percentage ranges, you're still going to be that.
We're in the conceptual stage, not even in the planning stage, just conceptual. And we're just trying to give you an order of magnitude more than anything. I'm just afraid that years from now, or it may not be that far, people will come back and say, you said it was going to cost, the $267.35. we're not saying that. We're saying these are order of magnitude numbers comparing the various options, and that's it. So it's a little risky putting this out, but people were looking for some kind of numbers. I guess this is one way of doing it. But people have to understand that the people that aren't here may not understand that going forward, and that's of concern.
Yeah, and I think the whole board is in agreement with that. But we felt it was important, just from a forced ranking perspective, that you have dollar values to look at. But they are by no means cast in concrete. They're probably, they're written in sand at this point. However, from a forced ranking perspective, I myself feel comfortable with them to explain to the public the impact of various options.
I'm in favor of it as well. And I get that there's variation. We reserve the right to get smarter. We just do. Everybody does. Inflation, and our numbers are actually based on 2022. We've got a 35% contingency built in. So I think there are certain buffers. But the reality is there's a lot of things we don't know until we get into the negotiations and settle down on exactly which one we're going to pick and why. Then we can give better math to it. But this is at least something that somebody can look at and say, okay, I kind of get this range of numbers, realizing that there's a lot of things we don't know about insurance and other things that have to be in these different transactions that we might participate in. But to me, I thought it was the right thing to do, at least to put a stake in the ground and say it's around this area. I think the difference between the ones are really the right way to look at it versus looking at an actual dollar amount by each one.
Richard,
I do not disagree with anything that Earl, Tom, and Chris have said, along with Austin. The discussions that have taken place and the push and pull of, well, what if, and so on, has been very vigorous and in a positive way to help come to this rather simple set of presentations. And I think it will help us to communicate with the public and continue to help us talk among ourselves, evaluate new input, and keep moving forward to press the negotiations with Sussex County to see how we can make this work.
yeah, and what I didn't say up front, and I'm going to repeat myself from prior meetings, is that at this point, our main focus is on options 3A and B with the county to work on the agreement. Option 1 is in abeyance, and option 2 is on the shelf at this point, just because of the order of magnitude of the costs and the other parts of the MCA, the risk factors and impact on the public. So we are moving forward on 3. It doesn't mean that it's a done deal. The key is going to be the details of the agreement that we reach with Sussex County. Austin, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, you guys pretty much hit right on it.
Thank you. I think at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions before we get to. Anything online? How many people do we have online, by the way?
We have 9 attendees.
Sumner?
So Sumner Crosby, 558 Powelltown Road. When you put the numbers up like that, Yeah, it's pretty hard to look at some of the options that I've been thinking almost nonstop about since we toured Wolf Neck, and Hans and I and to a later degree, Todd Lawson were talking before the meeting. And I think the thing I came away with from the tour, and thank you to Sussex County for giving us the tour, it was a real eye opener, is the opportunity for hybrid approaches. And I realize this complicates things for the analysis based on the report that exists today. But, in that three-ring circus that Earl referred to in the Wolf Neck conference room, we got to talking about several environmental opportunities to combine various aspects of several different options, solve several problems simultaneously. Yes, we talked about purple pipe. And I think one or both of the gentlemen back here made the point, I think Hans did, purple pipe in press. We've talked about this. Purple pipe makes a lot of sense where we have kind of an open book where we're starting a new development. It's a lot harder to do where we have an existing urban fabric and.
So if you don't
streets and
mind,
pipes.
for the people that are online, can you talk through purple pipes?
So, okay, the reason I bring up purple pipe here, and I've been thinking about it kind of nonstop with several other things that I'll get to in a minute, is as one of the members of the BPW mitigation committee, we've been looking at a whole bunch of different issues looking forward in time. And several comments that Austin made about particular challenges we have. And the one that came home for me when we were at Wolf Neck was, we got to talking in that conference room about, I'll get to the purple pipe in just a second.
Sure.
We got to talking in the conference room about an opportunity. DENREC, I think, is interested. I hope I'm not characterizing things unfairly. DENREC is very interested in the idea of using deep water injection of fresh water, including treated effluent, as a way of keeping saltwater intrusion from compromising public water supply wells. I can roll that up if I need to. We have in other times had conversations about saltwater intrusion and the threat of saltwater intrusion to this public water supply well. I assume that Rehoboth and other public water supply wells in the vicinity of where all of these operations with the wastewater treatment facility might go, might profit from such consideration. I don't think, it's not part of the GHD thing. There's no way to sort of figure out what the costs would be, but it is kind of an interesting opportunity. And I guess for me, it came home when I got to thinking about some of the BPW mitigation meeting comments, and Austin saying that probably the single greatest hourly demand for fresh water in the domestic public water supply system is maybe 3 to 5 a.m. on a summer morning when everybody's automatic irrigation systems kick on and everybody's sprinkling their lawns. So that's not something that needs drinking water quality water. That is something that I'm assuming could be applying treated effluent if we had something like purple pipe. And Press brought this up, I think, in the debates. Purple pipe is something that would take sewage effluent treated to an appropriate standard, and it would be running perhaps parallel or moving around a city or through a system, so that treated effluent could be used for irrigation purposes at individual homes, perhaps at community common facilities like park areas or green space areas and so on, where an HOA has I'm just riffing here. I'm just talking off the top of my head here, but there are all sorts of ways of setting these things up. But the point is, if down the line we have a water supply problem, and we also have an abundance of sewage effluent, it'd be nice to be able to put the two together where the quality could be worked in such a way that it wouldn't compromise the groundwater quality. So it's something that's been in the back of my mind. So Hans and I were talking beforehand about the opportunity for hybrids. Maybe there are purple pipe opportunities. Maybe there are opportunities for deep water injection of treated effluent to the quality of something like 3A or 3B that allows us to keep at bay saltwater intrusion, which is something that we do need to worry about when we have a rising sea changing the nature of the fresh and saline boundary as the salt water is rising and pushing inland. I remember a conversation that Scott Andrus from the Delaware Geological Survey, he made a presentation several years ago when I was on Planning Commission about the importance to BPW of saltwater intrusion. And you could go back and look, but I think he said of all the places around where you need to worry about it, the place I'd be worried about is, I guess it'd be Ebenezer Branch. It's basically coming in from the backside of Canary Creek, getting the wellhead to the, I guess it would be the northwest side of the well field. Maybe there's a way to work deep water injection on the other side of the wellhead area on this side. Whether or not it meets our needs, there may be benefits to doing it over at Wolf Neck. I don't know the full public water supply well field opportunity, but I will say I'm ranting here. I'm sorry. There are a lot of opportunities, as several of you pointed out, when you go to a facility the size of Wolf Neck and you see just the scale of the real estate. There are opportunities. We don't have quite the same constraints as we do here in the city limits of Lewes, and where we're worried about how much of the area we can pave over before we start to reduce the groundwater recharge. There's a lot of room out there to do a lot of things. So I guess I'm just thinking we've got these options drawn up, but there may be opportunities, and I don't want to lose the sort of synergistic opportunities of combining several of these options. Hans and I were talking before the meeting, maybe there's a way. He's got an elaborate system of valves that allows him to move effluent or to move sewage around from facility to facility. What we were talking about was something that would allow you to, based on water conditions at a given moment in time, to be able to switch the effluent discharge from a constructed wetland to deep water injection to an NPDS outfall like the one that we have here coming out of the Howard Seymour plant. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But the other thing that's been captivating so much in my imagination lately has actually been the thing that I said was, I think the term I used was crazy town back in one of the earlier meetings, which was, I guess it would be option 2C. Given the economics that you just showed, option 2C doesn't really look like something to consider, but from an environmental standpoint, I think it's pretty clear that my number one consideration I'm focused on the environmental matter. There are a lot of people that are going to be worried about the cost factors. The last thing I want to see is this relatively small water body of the Lewes and Rehoboth Canal receiving more of the pollutants that we know we can't put in these waterways because they've all got TMDLs on them. To have an ocean outfall where you have a much larger receiving water body moving all the time, I think is a really interesting idea. I think there are a whole lot of things we'd have to figure out in order to make that work. What routing it would take and so on. I'm sorry, I'm just throwing these things out because I may not have another opportunity to speak to you all. I may have more to say as the conversation develops, but as I understand it, based on what Tom just said, you're not tabling all these other things. You're not outright closing these other options, but for now, you are focused on 3A and 3B. So I guess the question is, what would it take? How do you reactivate one of these other options? You know, what are the triggers for those kinds of things?
Well, I mean, what would trigger one of them is the deal, if we can't reach an agreement with the county. I mean, that's in my mind, but Summer Stifford was actually, since we sat on the same committee, one of the things, as you remember what Scott said is that our well field is most, as you stated, at risk from Canary Creek and the Ebenezer Branch from that side. It's not from there because the canal actually acts as a boundary below. So the key would be for any injection to protect us, it would have to be on the east side,
Northwest side of the well field.
whatever this side of the canal is, not on the other side. Not saying that that's not a bad idea, but you know, for protecting our wells,
Right.
that's our main risk. And one of the things that we're pursuing is monitoring wells so we have advanced knowledge of them.
Right, and I realize, given the rather crazy scenario and set of possibilities I just laid out, and I may be hanging myself, nobody will ever want to hear me speak again. Maybe that's a good thing. This saltwater intrusion opportunity, deep water injection may not make sense in this project. But I think we should be considering that as a possibility. Maybe in this scheme, in some sort of joint effort wastewater treatment facility under say 3A, 3B, there may be value in looking at seeing where there's an opportunity for injecting effluent to keep saltwater intrusion at bay in any number of other public water supplies. It may be too far to take pipes to get all the way back to the Ebenezer Branch side of our well field. But maybe that's for the rest of the wizards in the room that understand the plumbing system that's working here. But I guess I found as we were going through the whole Wolf Neck conversation in that 3-ring circus mode, that there may very well be some real benefits to integrating several different things.
So first, I'm going to take great exception to my friend over here, the
I
3-ring circus. Knowing
said Barnum
Hans,
Bailey. It was with affection.
yeah. Hans is very thoughtful and, you know, I'm sure the discussion, it may have been chaotic, but it was not.
There was a lot of really good stuff being talked about. It wasn't,
Yeah.
we weren't playing around.
And just for the public's general information, you know, the whole purple pipe reuse of wastewater is not a new concept. The Southwest has been doing it and is full bore on it. And it's even further than that, where I think I've mentioned before, the Palo Verde nuclear power plant has bought the wastewater from the municipalities around it to use for the cooling towers because there's such a shortage of water. So reuse of wastewater, but is very dependent upon the cost of wastewater also, or the cost of fresh water. And so it's something worth, you know, continuing to explore, but and as you said, Sumner, you know, doing it, or press that, you know, doing it inside of an established area becomes much more costly, but doing it in new developments, and if, you know, we're blessed and cursed inside Lewes, we have very few new developments, but there's so much going on around us that's in other jurisdiction.
Right.
Some of it,
Doing something like purple pipe is a lost opportunity today, obviously requires some changes to the system in order to work. I don't know how easy it is to do, but it seems like it should be something that we're looking at maybe at the county level. The city always seems to be thinking about annexing other things. Maybe we're running out of annexable properties, but you know, I just put that out there. It's an ideal. It may be totally
Right, and just so that, and Hans can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the developments are not provided water by Sussex County.
Right.
They're from private water supplies, which is another complicating issue. So it doesn't mean that's not right. It just means it's now you're dealing with private corporations also.
Anyway, I think you guys get the idea. I like to overcomplicate things.
And then,
This all stems from how many times have you said this is the biggest decision that you're facing? These are the times to be thinking big. And I guess what I'll leave with at this moment is one of the other comments that was made before we started formally was we have time here, right? Even in option one, whatever, any of these options, this is going to take years, I'm assuming, to sort of work out. Let's keep our minds open while we're doing that.
one of the things that you brought up, and you didn't bring up, but came to mind. One of the things we've been hearing in several public forums and around is that the discharge to the canal is impacting sea level rise.
Yeah.
And I think we really need to dispel that. We're putting out 1 million gallons a day to the canal, which is connected to this large body of water called the Delaware Bay, which is connected to this even larger body of water called the Atlantic Ocean. If it is unmeasurable, it is non-existent that we are impacting sea level rise and the risks to properties from sea level rise by putting water into the canal. There are lots of other reasons, but water level is not one of them.
I concur with that
Yeah,
statement.
I just want to.
I'm not going to argue that point. I agree with you.
No.
Tom.
I know,
But I do.
I just wanted to
but I
use this
do- but
opportunity.
I do have concerns, and I think I've made them very clear about adding to the discharge of nutrients in the canal. Even though it's a big piece of water, it's not anywhere near as big as something like the ocean. But yes, I share your take on the role that a discharge even of 3 million gallons a day will make on the sea level. It's a much more complicated process. Thank you.
And I don't know about much about purple pipes, to be honest with you, but I certainly like the idea. And I don't know if when we're laying pipes to do one thing, that we can't lay pipes to do something else next to it. I think there could be opportunities to have certain areas that might have this kind of a coverage option. I think we need to be thoughtful of that. As long as you're putting something in the ground, you can put something next to it.
The only thing to be mindful of is that look at the properties that are left to be developed. A lot of those properties don't tend to be within the city, or they have to go through the process of annexation. If they're in the county, they don't have an obligation to connect to a public water source for irrigation production. So they can go to DNREC and get an ag permit. Schofield, every lot could have an ag well instead of connecting to domestic water for.
As an example, everybody in Schofield pretty much has their own well for irrigation.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. And is there opportunities to put up, if there's a pipe that goes by there, because it probably will, is there an opportunity to have them hook in at some point in the future? I don't know. I'm just trying to say, if you're going to dig a hole, figure out what else you can put in the hole that could be helpful, even if it's 20 years from now. Other than putting me in the hole.
And actually, and I don't know, because I've never looked at the network, the map of water pipes versus sewer pipes in the city. But I guess one of the things that, just to, maybe this is just a dead horse here, but with the water main work that you guys have started, you did a rather expensive project on Pilot Town Road, and I know you've got other similar projects slated along some of the bigger streets throughout the city. If you're pulling streets, what opportunities are there to be laying these pipes? I don't know.
Not to spoil the future, but you're gonna have a workshop there where GMB talks about what the progress moving forward is going to be, and you're looking at projects that theoretically won't happen in my lifetime. You have 56 plus miles of water main, and nearly 50% is considered iron. That could be ductile, it could be cast, but just so that you can have magnitude, Politown Road was 3 years, 5,200 linear feet of pipe.
And that was a shorter one than some of the others you've got
Yeah,
out there. Yeah, anyway, I just
so
throw that.
But as long as you're digging a hole.
what I'm saying is there are opportunities.
Okay, okay, good,
That's-
good. Now I like what you said.
Yep, look at that.
Anything else? Other questions? All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
Mark Prouty, I live over in Wolf Point. I want to first say thanks to the county for the wonderful show and tell that they had out at Wolf Neck. It was very, very helpful. Learned an awful lot out there about their plans. I'm sorry. I just have two issues I'd like to talk about. One, you've heard me talk about at the committee meetings. And that is during high water events, the saline water intrusion into the sewer system. Going to the Wolf Neck property, and as Hans was just talking about earlier here this evening, having those ponds available makes it a possibility to shunt saline influent into a storage and bleed it back through the treatment plant before it actually impacts the wastewater treatment. And I don't know if that's part of the consideration, but certainly with sea level rise and with stormwater, the saltwater impacts that are going to happen into our collection system are going to be extreme. And I know that we've talked about the possibility of sensing the salt water in the collection system and turning pump stations off during periods where the water is so saline that it could hurt the wastewater treatment. And I think that's a valid possibility, but there's still going to be a collection system full of saline water that needs to be handled. And I think that Wolf Neck treatment plant has a benefit in that regard, that if some of those lagoon areas could be held as a storage amount for that possibility, I think it'd be a benefit to look into. The second thing I wanted to bring about was we're talking about in these alternatives 3A and B, where the city would be paying for the operational costs while the Sussex County would take on all of the capital expenditures for the system combined. Very beneficial, in my opinion, to the town for that. However, in my history of dealing with construction of sewage treatment plants, one thing, and operation of sewage treatment plants, there are ways to build a treatment plant that can decrease the operational costs. The big operational costs are sludge management, manpower, and electric. And if I can remember in my past, a developer would come to our municipality and say, I want to build a new development, and here's the little treatment plant. And they put in a treatment plant that they'd hand over to the municipality later, and it would cost an arm and a leg to operate because it was, a slapdash operation. And I'm not saying that that's the case here, but I think that it's important to consider in the negotiations of the agreement that the city look to decreasing the operational costs in any way it can by possibly a higher capital expenditure in the sewage treatment plant. So those negotiations, the butting together of heads on that regard will have a possibility of decreasing to the city the cost of operations. And you look at what facilities are needed. Well, you've got sludge handling, so you'd want to put in high quality sludge handling facilities that decrease the costs of ultimate disposal of the solids rather than just something that you're hauling liquid solids away is the other end of the spectrum, and it costs you an arm and a leg to do that. The other thing would be, of course, the electric costs. And that's the tail that wags the dog. In our meetings, we have discussed the facilities that the city has for electric power into the city. And I don't know much about electric, but you're talking about having only a single server to the town. And it strikes me that what a wonderful place for windmills would be at that Wolf Neck point. Not only certainly there's a cost to build a windmill, but the power costs could drop to zero. And those operational costs going to zero would be a very beneficial impact to the people here. Now, what I'm sure Hans is cringing behind me as I speak, but I think that it ought to be looked at this possibility of the cost effectiveness, the present worth analysis that should be done on this treatment expansion should take into consideration the possibility of constructing windmills in those fields out there. It certainly will not impact, I can say straightforwardly, it will not impact the growth of trees or the discharge of effluent via the spray irrigation. And those are the major points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
First one online is from Alan Roth. Early on, I raised the issue of BPW's participation in the governance of the new facility so that Lewes is not a mere customer, AKA supplicant, in matters regarding O&M and other matters potentially affecting both our rates and our environment, especially years after the principals currently sitting in the room are long gone and memories of the lovely discussion are lost. There are various ways an agreement can be structured to ensure BPW has a real seat at the table for such a discussion. Even if the county owns the plant, are these options a part of the drafting process for BPW's proposal to the county?
The answer is yes.
But we have looked at other agreements that have similar things in it. They can give us a catalyst for how to look at that going forward and making sure we're doing the right balancing.
And I didn't mean to so terse, but we're still in the beginning phase, as I described earlier on. And we will gladly discuss those as we move forward. But at this point, we are just putting our thoughts in paper and we'll move forward on them. We have heard that loud and clear, and that is clearly going to be part of our agreements.
The next one's from Aaron Mushrush. Aaron, I can just promote you to just speak so that way, because I'm sure you'll have some follow-ups. Aaron, you should be on.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm in the car. So yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm getting the correct information out there. So from what I heard, are the next steps going to be conversations with the county regarding options 3A and 3B?
Yes, that's correct. That's where we're moving is 3A and 3B and drafting. Right now, we're putting concepts on paper for the agreement. And then after that, once we have a meeting of the minds, our solicitor and the county solicitor would be putting the draft together.
Okay. And then, so am I to assume then that options 1 and 2 are off the table, barring a breakdown in those conversations with the county?
Yes, unless some other major item came up. But we are not going to expend any additional money and on options 1 and 2 at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I do believe that was it. I think that there were some interesting points just raised, and I was, from what I'm hearing, everything's kind of in the concept phase. So are these ideas that you're hearing stuff that, are going to be brought to the table and stuff that you're going to be discussing?
Yes, and so the next slide is next steps. But yes, we have another meeting scheduled for June, Sharon,
14.
June 14th. And just remember, everyone, the next meeting is at the Rollins Center. Tonight, we were supplanted by the Planning Commission over there. So I don't want anyone to be confused of the locations.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll make sure I have that out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, then moving next steps. So we've kind of talked about them. So we have the next meeting is June 14th at the Rollins Center. We're going to continue to listen to public comments. The public comment period is open till Friday, June 2nd. Correct? So we encourage anyone to put their comments in. The emphasis really between now and then is to put the draft together of an agreement with the county so we can move forward. And we will continue to update the information in the slide decks and present it. And as I said earlier, the next meeting is a follow-on to this one. We will determine future meetings at that point, whether they be more information relative to the concept phase or what the schedule will be for once we make a decision and start moving forward to keep the public informed. And I think that was all I had. Anyone else have anything for the cause? And Hans, Todd, anything you want to add at this point?
That's scary.
Let the record show that Hans has nothing to say. I apologize for my jokes. They are all in jest throughout. We are treating this very, very seriously. I personally, and I know the rest of the board and staff really do understand this is the legacy that we're going to leave to our grandkids down the line. And the environment is critical to all of our needs.
I think to summarize, though, just to go back to Aaron's question, I think the position that you guys are putting forth today is that you're not making a decision in which option you're going forward with, but what you're doing is you're considering to focus in on what the agreement and framework would look like for option 3 to better help you analyze what decision you would do moving forward.
Correct. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh. No, please, no. You have to stand in line for everyone else, but
Yeah, I'm Gary Verdon on Kings Highway. I'm ADD, so I go left field, right field, so I'll try to say center. I'm sorry that I missed the waste plant, treatment plant. Again, I throw a lot of history in and maybe some humor like you do, but that was a giant field. And I thought that it was supposed to be only for spray irrigation for non-consumable hay. In other words, I don't know, this has been 20, 30 years ago, I got lost track. So apparently it's really progressed into, the cleaner water. I do like the idea of the purple pipe. Except I don't like the idea of it going back into the deep well, mainly because if things can happen, it's going to happen. So then we can possibly contaminate, our wells. But I do like that, maybe something in the newer developments in the county that, that to run like a double line, perhaps. I do like that. And I probably shouldn't say this either, but I do like the ideas of the windmills. People don't. There's all kinds of negatives about them, so on and so on. I have a son in the Netherlands, so I do know a little bit about that. One of the things I have for that, for the people say they're an eyesore. Well, my family's been here for 300 or 400 years, and we'll throw that into when they put the breakwaters out there. What if my family? Oh no, we don't want that ugly breakwater. Okay, so windmills, it's compromise. We have to give a little, take a little. So that's my spiel on the windmills. I do like that idea. Second off is on the another subject is possible the saltwater intrusion. Okay, in '68 when they dredged the canal, they pumped a lot of sand, widened the canal back behind my mother's house over on Lewes Beach. Not all that much mud because again. And they used it, they got it because that was part of the inland waterways, part of DOD, I guess, back in World War II, say we're able to fund it with, that's why your bridges are so high and everything like that for barges, et cetera, et cetera. And another thing is like when they put Little Humor was over where the dugout for the University of Delaware boats down there, that was all flat land back in there with frag muddies and all. It wasn't me, but I know the kids used to sit over there and drink beer and watch the police officers over it all.
You heard about that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, but the idea is we keep digging in a canal. Now, these guys don't want to hear because obviously they have docks on there. But again, we're digging more and more, even the mud. And there's some nasty mud coming out of it. So again, we have to give and take a little bit. And that's my feelings on all the subjects, from the windmills to, I do like that purple pipe idea for the irrigation, because eventually we are going to tap in and we're going to run out of, fresh water, and we need to protect our aquifer. So, of course, that goes on the county, like you said, you got United and you got Artesian and all that pumping the water in. How would we be able to fund the purple? That goes again to the county. There's some of your big developments, and we're not going to stop them. I mean, you're talking to somebody who grew up here. I just have to close my eyes and not think about it.
Yeah.
So that's just a couple of little things I had to throw in there. Okay. So,
And relative saltwater intrusion and other topics with the wells, I just want to make sure the public is aware. We have commissioned a study from the Delaware Geological Society to do an updated wellhead protection map and it would be for the entire aquifer. So not just Lewes, it'll be Artesian and Rehoboth Beach.
yeah, because Artesians, they've not been here that many years, or
Right.
United.
So unfortunately, like all engineering projects, it's 12 months to 16 months out till we get the report back.
Oh, yeah.
So because we're concerned about the wellhead just from a production rate, a contamination rate from all of the development going on, and saltwater intrusion. So it's really not part of this topic. However, it is something that the board
Yeah, well,
has already.
I guess I was talking about the effluent injection into the system is what I'm
Right.
talking about. So another thing is I do have 2 kids that are rather move down here to keep in the future, that if I ever get straight on Kings Highway. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else at this point? So if I can have a motion to go into executive session,
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for attending. Stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing everyone on the 14th of June.